everyone who might be watching this, at some point at least. As you might notice, I am not where we were before. Class let out early, but I had a bit of a headache, and I decided to treat myself a little bit before I actually go home for today. So, took a couple of minutes to come over here, but now it's time to go home. You guys haven't actually seen this part of town before, but this is actually the center of the college town. Down there is actually the gas station that was a pain in the ass to get out of at the beginning of the week. And it always is. You might have noticed the other two gas stations are all on the same side of the road and all have the exact same issues trying to get out. Slightly different because they're down here rather than up there, but yeah, it's all the same. I never finished my rant from earlier. And I'll just cough up along for no particular reason. It's actually rather warm today. Car swears it's only 63 degrees out, but it feels like it's mid-70s, upper 70s. It's probably warmer than that in my car, actually. Probably low 80s in my car. My car always gets hot, though. But I was talking about Archeage. I actually, like I was saying, do like the game, at least in general. There are some specific aspects that I have issues with. I think the developers failed to listen to player base during beta about issues regarding land, which I was talking about earlier, and also about the labor system the game uses. Everything from identifying weapons and getting monetary rewards from the mobs, the enemy monsters that you fight in player versus environment or PvE, all require labor, and labor builds up over time. As I actually accumulate twice as much while playing as free-to-play players do, and both types exist in the game. There's not just one system, but both. And unlike free-to-play players, I actually have some labor that I get even when I'm not playing. So right now at home I'm accumulating labor, and actually I probably have enough accumulated that I'll run into the cap. Not really my intention, it's just the way that goes. I haven't done much crafting, and if I had, I would have blown through a very large portion. But if I'm just opening packs up, various dropped items, quest rewards, which also have to use labor to identify, all that sort of stuff, that just doesn't use up enough resources to really make a difference for me yet. So, yeah, labor's an issue. More so the free-to-play model. It's still usually enough, but there's been concerns for quite a while that it's not enough to handle crafting. There's also some labor concerns regarding gold sellers or gold farmers. If you've played an MMO before, you know what a gold farmer is. They are definitely not hiding in this game. There's some very obvious ones. They use already a lot of accounts, even during Head Start, to advertise their wares in the chat for the game. People like myself are always banning or blocking those people, so we don't see their messages anymore. But the company also does seem to be getting rid of them on a regular basis, so they just create more and more of them. I've seen probably at least 50 that I noticed so far. So there's been quite a few announcements that I've been witness to. Not necessarily the worst that I've ever seen. I've played a lot of MMOs, and gold sellers of all sorts are sort of a problem area in most of them. In the old days, most of them were Chinese, and it was actually kind of funny because I speak a little bit of Chinese. At least enough that I could hold a vaguely literate conversation with them. And so I could do things like asking some gold farmers to not, like, block people off from doing a particular quest, and so get a group of players through an area where they were farming the mobs and they were also needed for a quest. I can't do that necessarily anymore because farmers aren't necessarily just from, like, China and other areas that speak Chinese anymore. I have found more than a few that seem to be Russian, actually, which is kind of shocking. I did take a bit of Russian. I took a combined Russian history and Russian culture class that taught basic Russian so that you could say some very simple phrases, so I can recognize the language when I hear it or see it typed, I should say. But I'm not very coherent, to say the least. So I don't get nearly as far with the Russians, and they don't seem as nice in general, though I know that's pure opinion based on the ones I've run into. A lot of them would rather shoot you first and ask questions later, to put it simply. If they're in a PvP zone, and the map has both non-PvP maps and PvP maps, but all the higher level areas are open PvP. There are peace times within those maps, though. Unfortunately, that's sort of a problem for me leveling right now. All of my leveling areas are in, these PvP zones, and it seems that the one that I need right now is never at peace while I am online. That might be different over the weekend. I'm hoping to get a lot more playing in then, and hopefully it will be better. I really hope it is. I'd like to finish leveling up past 40, which is all I've got. The cap is at 50, so there's not exactly a lot of headroom left. And this guy is doing 40 miles an hour up this hill. I could have gone around him, but I was running out of passing zone. And as you might know by now, the other side of this hill is an intersection, and there is one brief passing zone going downhill, so if he's still going slow going down, I might pass him there. But generally it's not worth it. It's just easier to wait until the intersection and hope he's not going the same way. Back to Archeage, though. In the initial higher level maps, open PvP is faction specific. Only your faction are really on those maps generally, because they're in your continent. And there's currently 2 continents, one for each set of players, and it sets up a, dualism where the 2 sides are basically against each other. However, expansions for the game that are already out in other areas of the world change that and add a 3rd continent, and you can team up with the rival faction on that continent. It will change the guild structure pretty radically from what I understand. Other games have done that. I played Terra for about 6 months, and it did that same sort of thing in one of its patches. It seems to be the new trend for Korean games. Or at least what I've seen for the system that they put into Terra reminds me of that. And he's going to go my direction. Well, I might be passing him. The first time you get to see me pass someone. It should be impressive. Not really. But, we'll see how that goes. But, Archeage has something else that I've seen in some other games, but not all in one package. It has some aspects of the combat, but not the pacing, which is the thing I really liked about combat in Terra. Combat in Terra is very active. It's like playing an action game. I can't think of a good comparison, but definitely not your typical RPG feel, where you're just clicking buttons and you only press a few things and that's all you do. Terra tends to feel a little more like a fighter. You don't get that in Archeage so much, but it feels more responsive than like your traditional game. WoW is usually the one that's used as the example of the traditional game, because unlike what some of its players feel, it was not the first MMO. It just got a combined package that was equal to anything else out there, combining the best elements of other games that had come before it. Archeage tries to do something of the same sort, combining aspects from different games that had come out before it. Graphically, it looks about equal with Terra. I liked the graphics of Terra, so I tend to like the graphics in Archeage. Less customization, like in most Korean games, than what you usually tend to get these days in Western MMOs. So not the depth. You get a bunch of like head choices, and you can edit some facial features. There is some things you can do that are quite complex with editing your character. You got to sort of dig into the interface a bit to get those options to come up, though. And he keeps speeding up when we get into a passing zone. We're actually doing the speed limit right now, which he hasn't been most of the rest of the time. I don't like that in other drivers. I don't understand the need to speed up in a passing zone and otherwise drive slower. There's no inherent difference except in visibility between non-passing zones and passing zones. Too many people just seem to slow down outside of a passing zone. And he slowed down again now. I could pass him, but the zone the zone gets over in like 500 feet here. And after that is the roundabout, which marks our halfway point. It's all kind of pointless. Kind of hope I don't have to follow them all the way home, though. Oh well, back to the game. Driving is distracting. You've heard it here first. Probably not, but you've heard it here, definitely. Graphics is good, like I said. Customization is there, you just have to dig for it. There's no, like, body sliders, though. You can't be, like, taller than other players or rounder or anything like that. And a lot of that has to come from the way they model armor. Allowing customization in the look of your model, at least the bulk of the look of your model, affects their ability to easily make armor. And you shouldn't be stopping. You had a good chance to go, dude. And it's a yield. Go! Go! No, you're gonna be an ass. It's the wrong time of day to be nice about it. And he's going the other way, thankfully. Not that I don't have a bunch of people in front of me and who knows how they drive. But gameplay feels good. I'm not a big fan of PvP. At least open PvP and in your own faction. I've always felt that within faction open PvP was a bad idea. The ability to go rogue. I know some people like that, but every time I see them, they're griefers. They are just wanting to make your life hell, and that is their only goal. And I don't think that in any way makes a good player base. Who wants to be abused when they're playing a game? All too often, open PvP in the game, especially within your own faction, the guys will go purple, as they call it, because that's the color that your name changes. Not that you get to see that really soon when they come into visible range, so they can sort of take you by surprise pretty easily. But usually they're taking you by surprise anyways, because they scope out an area before they come out of hiding. They wait for you to get engaged in combat with either a mob that chases you down or a mob that you're fighting because it's part of a quest. And then when you're engaged, they come out and they hammer you. Usually they wait long enough that you've taken some damage first. And if you have a really good PvP build, you might be able to take them, even if they get the first hit off. I've done it a couple of times. Even though I don't like PvP, I can do it. But how is that supposed to be fun? I mean, it's obviously fun for the griefer, but it's not fun to have someone just attack you randomly out of nowhere. And people go, oh, but that's real life. Where are you getting attacked out of nowhere except by criminals who you don't want to encounter? Anyone who seriously thinks that they want, on a random basis, every day, to encounter people who just come out and try to kill you is crazy. They're seriously crazy and deranged. And there are people out there in the MMO community that feel that this is the right way to play a game, and I don't understand that, and I never will. You can argue any point you want with me on that fact, but every time I see it, it's always just a matter of griefing. It is nothing about PvP or making a game more realistic, which is the usual arguments that I hear. No, you just want to be an ass. And these people get off on that. That's not how I want to play a game. I prefer a challenge, and I like a player as a challenge, but in a regulated way. I have no problems with like open warfare, which is things like, you know, taking castles, other, you know, types of engagements, for lack of a better term. Things like even inter-guild actions, I can understand those. But I can't see these MMO worlds existing with bunches of people fighting each other in the streets. It's just not how things work. Yeah, I know. There's lots of people that are going to argue with me on that. They like their open PvP where they can just harass anyone they feel like. And you guys can leave comments too, but I will probably not answer you. I have no intention of even looking at your posts. I've had the argument before. I've been playing MMOs for over a decade, as sad as that sounds. I remember when WoW was in beta. I had a beta invite, but I was actually playing Lineage 2 at the time, which is one of those open PvP games where anyone could become a criminal. Yeah, and so I never played WoW. I knew people who got into it, but I never did because I was burnt out when I left Lineage 2, and I wanted to cool down from MMOs for a while, so I didn't play any for probably 2 years. So I missed out on the initial influx of WoW, and I never decided to pick it up coming back. There were just newer things, and I'd like to try those instead of something that I know is a rehash of all the good things from the games that came before it. There is that, but Archeage, yes, that's what I was talking about before I got sidetracked into player versus player combat. They do have castle raids, war times as well as the peace times in those maps. You can fight over control of the maps. I understand the concept of PvP when you're in the other continent's map. That's understandable to some degree. They might want to implement a visa system so you can go visit the other country without going to war. It's a little more civilized that way. There's nothing in the lore that says that these two continents are actually, like, actively competing against each other in a military way. In fact, they all seem to have these internal problems, which is why they have all these monsters roaming about that you kill in the game. So, lore-wise, I don't quite see the point of it. I know technically the factions are in conflict with each other, but not what sounds like a war footing. There's a lot of little bits of lore here and there, but like a lot of MMOs, it kind of falls flat in actually providing a coherent story. That was one of the best things ever about Star Wars: The Old Republic. The lore and the story were such a focus in that game. I played quite a bit of Star Wars: The Old Republic all through its beta period, bit into the release. However, I didn't know enough people that were playing it when it wasn't free to play, and I hate the way they did free to play. Because obviously once I stopped paying, my account reverted to a free to play account. So most of my characters, and I had a full account's worth of characters, all went away. I pretty much had one of everything. And to get back what I lost, I would have to put way more money than I spent to initially purchase the game. Way more money. It's just a losing proposition to come back to that game, so I never have. I briefly came back as a free player just to play a little bit with one friend who picked it up once it became free, but not enough oomph there for me. I have not in Archeage yet done anything with guilds because I have a friend who I've been waiting on to start playing. They didn't actually purchase the game, so they were going to always be a free-to-play player, and they haven't started their account yet still. I have a second account, just waiting to level up with them, at least until those accounts catch up to my main, if it catches up to my main. It tends to be that I like to play at hours where my other friends aren't necessarily on. Also part of being East Coast, and a lot of people I know are West Coast, which is sort of an issue. West Coast is 3 hours behind me, so like I'll get some early hours in the morning to play, like say 7 or 8 a.m. Eastern time, but that's like 5 a.m. on the West Coast. It's a really good time to play as far as busyness of the server goes. You get a lot more of the server to yourself, a lot less hassle going on. But none of the people I know ever tend to seem to be online, because both of them always seem to be West Coast. It's also why it's such a hard thing for me to find a guild. Too many guilds that I end up joining, all the people, or the vast bulk of them, are all West Coast, and they don't understand why prime time for them, which is like 9 or 10 at night, is midnight or 1 o'clock in the morning for me, and I'm not doing that. I got news for people. I'm not as young as I used to be. I'd like to be a lot younger than I am. Sometimes I do actually still feel a bit younger than I am. But no, I'm not, and I can't do like all night things anymore, or even stay up until 1, especially when for work I have to get up at 6 in the morning. I cannot do 5 hours of sleep. I know there are some people that can, but I'm just a wreck if that's all I get. And God forbid it's even later than that. I know some guilds that can't seem to get everyone together until about 2 p.m. 2 p.m. 10 p.m. Out on the West Coast in Pacific time. And 1 o'clock just starting something is not going to work for me. So, there's that. But I think I've probably said enough about Archeage. You got a lot of the bad, because this is a rant. But there's also the good. So, just to make sure you know, I do actually like the game, and I will be playing more of it. And I'd stream it if I could manage to, but I don't seem to have enough bandwidth right now. So we'll have to see how that works in the future. But, see you all later, and I hope you have fun. Take care.